a huge scale of human resources and also a very limited group of livestock. But we can also see from here that, well, their land is really not that fertile. We have a picture here actually. So we say that a very big part of their pasture is covered by snow and ice throughout the year, which makes a main source of water for both human beings and animals. But just imagine how fragile the ecology is, like the pasture, the meadow located at the foot of an icy mountain. The, the environment is very fragile, and once it's damaged, it's almost impossible to repair itself. And the consequence usually goes to a very heavy dissertation. And now we have a straightforward knowledge about like how hard life is as a herder living on this place. And what comes with more, let's say, brutal memory is that they have nearly no linguistic capacity of Tibetan language. And they have a reviving but still weak religious practices comparing to other Tibetan tribes. Well, this is mainly because most of their culture accumulation has been systematically destroyed during the Cultural Revolution. Given how small the group is, they're too small to organize any resistant efforts against the powerful intervention from the state. So by far, almost like even if elderly people over 80s, almost none of them could speak their traditional Tibetan, let alone writing. So right now, everybody is having a Mandarin name, and their like usual daily spoken language is Mandarin. Right now, like in recent years, especially after they're resettled, we have seen a reviving effort to like revive their tradition, let's say tradition about religion, tradition about costume, and tradition about languages. Mm, well, we have seen some progress, but it is still coming slow. And in the end, this this group of people, this village, has been taken as the object of poverty governance from very early time, let's say 2005 until now. So right now, their engineering of poverty governance is still not finished, which means a big portion of population is still living under poverty according to the standard given by the state. Well, this partly makes the direct motivation for the state to conduct this resettlement project. Because we will see that, okay, we will, let's keep it here. So we will see here that apart from herding, this territory has gone another story, which is large scale state-led excavation. So as we mentioned above, this place is located in between two very big, huge plateaus, which means there are a lot of mineral storage. So they have mineral storage of over 10 types, like iron, steel, gold, silver, lithium, as I heard. And a few of this storage ranks the top nationwide in terms of amount. And the I think the detectivation and excavation has been started very early, shortly after China has established itself as a modern nation state in 1949. So since 1950s, the country has already started to excavating this place in order to support itself to build a modern industry and to, well, stand safely when it was facing so much like danger and threat from outside. And the output of this excavation supports the biggest steel and iron factory in northwest China. So we can imagine how large amount it is of the excavation. And private capital flocked into the mining industry since opening and reform in 1980s. Well, which means after the opening and reform, it is very welcome and even encouraged by the state to develop your own business. And well, many people have came to this place, individuals, small groups. they also joined the large-scale excavation, and we can imagine how primitive their techniques are and how terrible the damages large-scale mining has created to this place. And the last is a very interesting phenomenon. It's about illegal gold mining. So this is not state-led, okay? It's mostly done by the refugees, like, which I have to keep it off the book here, mostly Muslims from Qinghai province and Ningxia province, Muslim refugees who run away from their original living place because of starvation and poverty. They went to the like this village and to to support themselves through gold mining, which is even if it's illegal. And this skyrocketed during 1980s and only I think strictly forbidden in 2010. So it's forbidden very recently, kind of going on the same way with the resettlement project of the local herders. And so here I have a picture of, I think it's a railroad built by the workers who conducted excavation in 1950s. So we can also imagine that in such a land where there's no electricity, no tap water, no any form of machinery, they built such a huge bridge, a railway like this, how much blood and lives it has costed and how much damage for the ecology it has left. So it comes with a very straightforward, visible, visible insight. And just look at how desolate the land is. There is no plant, not even grass on the ground, and it's just bare earth because the weather is super dry, and the rain amount is just not enough to support any form of life. And despite all this, they created this engineering. Wow. And then, so what comes as a consequence of all this excavation, of all this engineering, all this mining factory building, is the resettlement of local herders. So let's say that resettlement is actually not a thing that is specific to China. It is actually very common method of social engineering that we can see throughout the world, especially in the global south. And as far as I know, many countries from Africa, especially Egypt, has done very large scale of resettlement, uh, which which is also compelled because of large scale construction for dams, bridges, railroads, let's say infrastructure in total. But the resettlement program in China is very special for several reasons. Because it's special because there are a certain set of values and ideas saturated throughout the process. So through resettlement, what has been changed is not only the location of where people live. It is a set of very well practiced governing techniques where the whole lifestyle is systematically switched to a modernized idea about life. And there is a very specific goal of this engineering work. Here are my notes writing. So here we have a brief timeline about how the resettlement is conducted, both nationwide and in this place where I did my fieldwork. So in 2006, there's a very, very high level political order from the central level of the government, which orders the western provinces, including Gansu, Qinghai, let's say Tibet, Xinjiang, and Inner Mongolia, to settle down the herders living in these places. So it's actually a nationwide project that starts in several provinces at the same time. And some people like they would read that. So this nationwide order is motivated by a very disaster rainstorm that occurred to China in 1990s, which created a huge disaster in the southern part of China, which costed millions of lives. And that was the point when our leaders realized, well, it's time that we have to pay some attention to ecological safety. Otherwise, we're too fragile to go through another disaster like that. And well, if we go back to this map, we will also notice that this village is also located in the like upward arranging of several important rivers for the country. If you can see the Ilo River from the above and the Yangtze River from the below, but they kind of originated from the same place, which is Tibetan Plateau, and where this village is located, like the mountain, it also makes a part of the arranging for the water resources of the country. So this also makes a part of the motivation for the state rulers to decide, okay, we have to do something to protect these rivers, to protect our ecology. Otherwise, the ecology could really fall, and we have learned this lesson with the cost of blood and life. So from um, in terms of local society from 1990s, resettlement has been used as a method to help people get rid of poverty. So in local government, resettlement is not understood in the same way with how the state rulers understand it. It is used to help people to live better, with better conditions, with better access to the market, to the medical service, to better job opportunities, to things like that. Because apparently, well, not everybody is capable of running their own life in a very, very desolate land. And some of them did feel really severe adversity. So in 1990s, the local government has been resettling people down, herders down, in order to improve their living conditions. But since 2006, resettlement is taken as a state policy, and the process accelerated a lot as a social engineering project. But, well, it takes some time for political order to go to the local from the central hierarchy. Especially if you think about how big the country is and how complicated the whole political hierarchy is. So it does take some time. But there came a turning point in 2016 when the policies were conducted way more powerfully and almost a little bit compulsorily, and every household is settled, literally every one of them. Well, it was because, so this is a little bit anecdotal, but well, I came from a nearby city and I kind of knew something about it. So in 2016, there was a group of inspectors from the central government who came to this village in order to have a viewing of how their ecological protection work is going on. And guess what they found? So they found that there are lots of private capital, private individual factories mining. Well, almost a lot of them are illegal, mining without license and mining with very, very primitive, very low standard techniques, which has badly, badly, badly damaged the environment. And many grassland, it is completely destroyed, and also pollution in the water. And this kind of pissed off our rulers in the center. And they gave a very, very powerful order to strictly forbidden every single individual to conduct any production activity in this place. And as far as I know, a lot of high level officials, cadres, were got into jail because of this accident. And well, all in all, since 2016, it is no longer possible for anybody to keep herding on the pasture, and it is no longer possible for most people, let's say, who are not locals, to even just enter the pasture. So the pasture, right? So outside of this picture, if I take one step away from this thing, you will see a iron fence like surrounding the whole pasture land and dividing it into small plots, which belongs to different households. So since then, the whole policy has been going on a lot more strict, and everybody, well, the herders living on the pasture land have been systematically settled. But by settling, it is not, we're not only talking about stopping them from herding. So what comes as a consequence is that, okay, if these people cannot herd anymore, where do they go? And where do they live? And a very straightforward contrast we can see from this picture is that, so previously, so this is a house, like a house they have on their winter pasture, and they have like, of course, pastures for each season, and on each piece of pasture they have a small hut like this, which consists a whole family. So it's very crowded, of course, and it is no way a cozy dwelling, I would say. And everybody, like, in order to make sure that there are not too many animals grazing on the same piece of pasture, and households are pretty scattered. But what we have here is a very, very newly built neighborhood that is financially supported by both central and provincial and local government. So a neighborhood we see on the right side, let's say it's very modern, right? We can tell, and it's very complete in terms of infrastructure. We see well-paved railroads, and there is a bridge across the river, and yeah, and people are concentrated apparently. So I'm not sure. I still haven't been able to figure out the proper words I can use when I'm supposed to describe a complete switch of lifestyle. So, just in a nutshell, what resettlement has caused to these people is a complete switch, a complete alteration of lifestyle. They cannot hurt anymore. Everything they're familiar with is gone. So I have picked out several, like, let's say, important framework right here that might that matters more heavily than other factors. So first, what comes into mind is, what about financial income? What about money? Then where do I get my money? So previously, what brings money to their house is basically herding, right? But herding, as we know, is a very precarious work. Well, like how much you can sell your goat for is completely dependent on the market, right? If the market offers you very unfriendly price, the herders are not there to negotiate with it. And what they could do is only to take what the market offers, and let alone the unstable climate on the high altitude mountainous pasture. And also, let's think about how dangerous it could be to work in such a place. What if you get kicked by a goat? What if you fell down from your house? What if you get any other kind of emergent medical incident? You're not going to get like very in-time medical service. So life in general is very precarious and it's always threatened. It's very, like, some people, like even people at their late 30s, like at their early 40s, still have a strong and clear memory of starvation. And they go like, when we were attending like primary school, everybody was there, were learning with an empty belly, and how could I concentrate on my study? So starvation is still very recent memory, and life is very hard in general. And now what their financial incomes come from is very, uh, let's say, stable. So mostly from compensation. But actually, this compensation money from the government is pretty good if you live in the countryside. It's way more stable and even a lot, mm, a lot higher than what you can manage to make from herding throughout the year. And especially if you think that mm, with compensation, it means that the herders are no longer needed to work. So if you're in terrible health situation, you can choose just to stay at home. And if you are not, if you're capable, you can go out for day labor jobs, which also creates quite good income if you keep working for the whole summer. So in this case, the financial income is way more stable. But what comes as a problem is that it is very, very restrained, where one sees no channel to move upward, right? For herding, it is still a production that you can organize by yourself. If I work hard enough, if I'm smart enough, I can grow the group of my goals. I can make more and more money. But by compensation and day labor, well, the limit of income is very, very close, let's say. And what comes next? What comes next is a concern for housing. So if we live in a small hut like this, well, of course I build it by myself. Of course, I'm not going to sell it. If I sell it to somebody else, I will have to build another, so I can accommodate myself. And well, I don't expect to be very cozy living in such a hut. But after they're resettled, the government has built very, very modernized apartments, and they are sold to the herders at at highly subsidized price. And it's also possible to buy and sell. Mm. Well, how can I make a proper comparison? Say I will say that the quality of these apartments are pretty good. I mean, I have a small apartment rented nearby our institute, like right over there, nearby the Platinum Hotel. I rented from a young couple, Mongolian citizens, and I would say the apartments offered to these herders are even better than the one I'm having right now. So it's very comfortable and it's very spacious, well lighted, and well heated, which is important to live in a high altitude place. But then another problem that comes here is that so the houses now it turned from a domestic property into a commodity. It is possible to buy and sell, which means it is also possible for you to buy a house somewhere else. You can choose to move to the city or move to another region of the country or move to bigger cities farther and farther away, or even choose to move abroad. And you are no longer physically fixed to a certain location. And which means wherever one is going, this person has to think about how can I afford a house in this place, and which we will summarize a bit more in the later conclusion. And then what connects closely with this is the problem of education. So during the herding time, well, apparently, if I'm going to travel to school from a hut like this, it's going to take quite some time. So many kids are kept in home without attending primary school and well, they're kept at home by their parents because herding is such a demanding and laborious work, and even if human resources from a kid is needed, is necessary. So many of them take education voluntarily. Like education does not help that much. If we think we define education as what we might see here, well, schools that teaching math, teaching English, teaching physics and the chemistry. Well, why do I need English for herding? So for during the herding time, education was still very voluntary, but it became super compulsory after the herders are settled. Well, the reason is also easy. Once they are settled, people are concentrated together, and there is a small school built next to the neighborhood, and it's a lot easier for the local cadres to persuade the parents, one by one, household by household, to let their kids attend education. But also, education becomes the only way for these people to move up forward in the very fierce market of the country. If you want to get richer, if you want to take a better job than what your parents do, if you want to live in a bigger city, the only way you can achieve self success is to attend education. So from primary school to high school to college, and eventually you can work as a, let's say, bank officer or something, or at least a hired position in an organization. And then what comes the next question is, considering how underdeveloped this region is, and considering how the root of pastoralism here. So many people found themselves very, very dragged back in the competition of education. They are no way there to be in comparison with those primary students, let's say from Shanghai, Beijing, and the level of educational resources are just not the same. So many of them, the parents who are very concerned with the personal development of their kids, have to migrate to other cities, to bigger cities where they can enjoy better educational resources, which also force them to permanently leave their living place right now. So there are so many changes that I can definitely not exhaust here. But what we see in general as a consequence of resettlement is a way higher degree of urbanization, right? It is no longer possible to stay on the pasture. Stay on the pasture. You cannot herd, you cannot farm, you cannot just find a livelihood to support yourself. And the only solution is to go to the city to find if you can have any day labor work, if you can get some kind of opportunities and to settle down there where you have access to the modern infrastructure of living. And then we also have a way higher degree of migration. So at this moment, almost over a half of residents in this village, they also have apartments in somewhere else, like in the cities, in provincial capital, like in bigger cities. So they switch very often. They transfer between the two dwelling locations, like almost on the weekly basis. Like this week, I'm going to be in the village, but next week I'll have to go back to city because my daughter is going to start her semester. I'll have to be there to take care of her, or in other cases, the family has to separate, right? The mother go with the kids to the city and to take care of the kids. Father stays in the village to work or to take care of the elderly. So we have a higher migration tendency. And what also comes together is a deeper involvement in the real estate market, right? Houses become a commodity, which means like we have to pay a lot to buy a house wherever we go. And especially you want to send your kid to a better school in a big city, you will have to think, okay, where am I going to live in this place? And well, real estate market, as some of you might know, is super crazy in China. And a lot of people just spend the savings of their lifelong time, but they can still not afford a house. So what we have um, in the end, let's say, is an engagement in the market and neoliberalism, which treats people from the bottom side of society very, very harshly. And in the end, we have a restrained upward mobility and long-term development. Okay. So apart from this, well, let's say, disappointing consequences, there are two things that I find particularly interesting that might complicate our understanding of the whole resettlement project and policy. So the first idea that confused me for a little while is the change about the ecological ideas of local herders. So if so I read in some literature from the Western scholars that it's very common for them to imagine nomadism to be so in natural harmony with the nature, like herders get on well with the nature so much. There is almost no conflict between human and animals, and everybody loves the natural environment so much. But in my case, this is not true. So before the herders were settled, as we mentioned before, like right here, there have been very, very long-term and large-scale mineral activities, right, from both the state and individuals. Well, if it's not possible for the local residents to fight against the state, it is still possible for them to fight against these illegal gold miners. But there hasn't been any collective effort to find to drive away, to kick out those poor refugees from starvation from other provinces. There are no any collective efforts. Some of the local herders even made friends with the gold miners who are destroying their pastures. This is very interesting. And they also have a very interesting register themselves about this problem. They were like, at this time, none of us was able to fill our belly. And would we make trouble with another poor guy? So everybody is so poor, everybody is in suffering and starvation, and I just don't want to bother. And that guy is not creating too much problem to my pastor, and he's paying me money. So I think it's good enough to let this poor guy mine some gold and support himself. And afterwards, after the resettlement, of course, which is motivated based on the justification that this is done out of the good for the environment, there has been very clear awareness to protect the land. So the land as both an ancestral space where they have been living for generations, but also a land which is ecologically fragile, ecologically vulnerable, a land that has been through a lot of pollution and damage. And now, right now, they have very clear awareness about this, no matter where this awareness come from. And they have made some activities based on this knowledge. So occasionally there are herders from other provinces, mostly from Qinghai. So these herders, they're kind of like herd their own goats on somebody else's pasture. And these residents voluntarily organized a small group to go on cruises on their pasture to make sure that nobody is herding there sneakily, and which, well, they are very, which is a activity that they are very proud of and seen as a protection for the land. Well, and another thing that I also found interesting, but also comes as complicated influence of resettlement is the cultural and ethnic identity, or more specifically, let's say an identity anxiety. So after they're settled down, so they lost their livelihood of herding, which is considered the core of their cultural and ethnic identity that distinguishes them from any other group. So they think they see themselves as Tibetan because Han people don't herd. They see themselves as culturally different because their culture, their material diversity, their ideas about nature, their ideas about family and kinship, it's all organized around their economic method, which is herding. So herding really takes a core role here in their identity. And also when they're talking about other bigger tribes of Tibet, let's say Amdo, which is famous for its mm, cultural accumulation and accumulation in the Tibetan world. But Amdo people, most of them also do not herd. So herding is very, very important for this group of Tibetan, which means that for themselves, herding means that they're Tibetan and which is different from Han people and also different from other Tibetan tribes. What comes interesting is that after they're settled, when they lose the livelihood of herding, they had more financial capacity to invest on their cultural identity. Like let's say it's straightforward, they have more money to buy those like let's say religious objects, to make sacrifices to the temple, and to decorate their houses with more cultural symbols. And they have money to do it, and they have time, which is um, which means that okay, it's summertime, we don't have to work because we have that compensation money. So everybody could gather together and we dance, we sing, and we show how nicely we have made our traditional costume. So financial capacity and time had made a very strong investment for them to revive their cultural identity, even if they have already lost the livelihood of herding. And there has been also a very strong emotional anxiety. Now that their lifestyle is a lot more urbanized, it's a lot more modernized, and it's getting more and more similar to that of Han people living in the city. And it terribly, terribly threatens their feeling of being a Tibetan. And then what do we do? There is a very strong emotional anxiety that motivates people to keep invest their money and their time into revise their tradition practices. So right now, I think there are at least 3 very huge festivals where everyone of the village would gather together and have their traditional dance and have a singing competition and spend time together and learn some like um, some traditional traditional legendary stories from the elderly people, and they have also kind of commoditized it, like make it commercial as an art festival for the tourists. So this revision of tradition is also creating more financial income, which brings even stronger anxiety and stronger motivation. So right now, with these two parts, what brings into my mind is that it is always very difficult. Let's say it is always very difficult to foresee, to predict the actual consequences of this kind of large-scale nation projects, because um, if we see that, if we think about this from a lot of most of the critiques given by the literature, right? Resettlement for Tibetan, for herders, let's say in general, in regardless of their ethnic identity, resettlement is a systematic destruction of a lifestyle, right? It's supposed to be very damaging, and it is in most of the cases. It is very damaging for the sense of belonging, for the sense of identity, and for their economic capacity, for their long-term possibility to grow, and also for the sustain of the civilization itself. But what we have here is also a sense of let's say satisfaction, right? People are experiencing a very strong feeling that we have changed so much. We're so much more a civilized group. We're so modern, and we think about our culture our culture, our land, our way of living in a better way. And we're no longer so lagged behind. We think more carefully about our lifestyle, and we will become better herders one day if it gets possible to herd back to the pasture. There is a sense of pride and satisfaction about what they have gone through. The resettlement has made a turning point of their living situation from a very separated, very hard life, a memory that is full of starvation and suffering and loss of and health damage. And right now things are going on better and better. But this is very uncommon among the cases of resettlement, and I would say it's to a large degree a coincidence instead of designed consequence. And there are a lot of other roles are playing their function right here. So I have two questions that I hope my work can bring everybody into thinking. The first one is, can we design the resettlement policy better to improve its sorry for the typo, eventual effect, and is success or failure a coincidence or a necessity? So there are a lot of other things apart from designing itself are playing their role here. So first thing that comes to my mind is a power hierarchical organization. So as we know, China is such a huge country, right? It takes a lot of time for the central order to reach the local government, and in so many levels of revision, and how to say, it is revised according to the intellectual level of the local cadres. It is also dependent on the financial capacity of the local government, like how much compensation you can give to the herders, right? And what comes as a consequence is that even if resettlement in China comes as a nationwide project, the actual effect of it can be really diverse, can be really different. So what we have here is a rather successful case, but as far as I know, most of the cases which are done in Qinghai provinces ended up in a very adverse situation. Mm. So, and apart from power regime, so natural conditions also make also matter a lot here. So as we mentioned, the fertile of these people, sorry, the land of these people was really not fertile, and they were already like struggling on the line of surviving or death. So therefore, in this kind of situation, being resettled and seeking for other kind of livelihood sounds to be a very good choice for them. But what about the herders who are living on more fertile land? What about those herders who are really enjoying their life, um, enjoying their life, like whose livestock, whose group of livestock can reach over, let's say, 2,000 goats? We're really like having a and very healthy circulated income whose like livelihood is organizing itself very successfully, right? So what about those places? And the last is the resettled location. So in my case, the local herders, they were not resettled very far from their previous land. It's like, so if you drive at a very high speed for half a day, let's say 4 hours, you will be on your pasture from the settling neighborhood. But in some cases, you will have to keep driving for a week to go back to your pasture. So this resettlement location diverges a lot according to the policy given by the local governments, but it does matter even more for how life would go on after being resettled for the herders. And well, I believe you will see an even wider variety if we look at worldwide, like how those like people living in Africa, how they are resettled really far to the other side of the country because their previous land was integrated by a national park. So this resettled location creates a lot of problems and in many unexpected ways. Mm. So what the question I'm proposing here is that can we design it? So is a resettlement project something that we can design better and better, and we can make sure that the eventual effect would be positive, would be good, would be welcomed by the people who are like actually bearing the consequences. And even if they are happy with what they have now, is it also good for them in the longer term, right? And if we remember what James Scott has taught us, it is more often the case that the national projects fail. And its failure is usually caused by a lack of knowledge for the culture. But my case also proved here that even if this kind of resettlement projects are criticized, there is a lacking of consultancy. But can we guarantee that a policy is surely going to be successful, even if the local people are happy with it, right? How clear the future you can describe to these people, and how much capacity they have to how to say to prospect what the future would be like, and how solid the fundamental they have is to make this decision, right? So we have all these complicated issues here, and um, well, let's say it's anthropologists' duty to function better in this kind of large scale projects. But then another thing we need to think about is how much power do anthropologists have, right? So right now, I think one solution I would think of is that it's time to think alternatively from the top-down approach of reforming a society, right? We've already seen too many failures of this kind of cases. And what are we going to do if we just leave the problems to the localities? Well, it's an open question. I cannot say for sure anyway, but it's definitely a good idea to keep in mind. So the second question I have is, what is a more sustainable model of coexistence between human and nature in the time of climate change and ecological instability? So, as far as I'm concerned, the Chinese government has been taking this logic for quite some time, which I call mean well and mean well. So it has been saying, meanwhile, we are powerfully developing our economy, still we have to protect our ecology. but how, right? And in actual life, what happens more is that the pollution comes first and the repair comes next. And then we have already seen what comes as a consequence of this kind of idea, right? The whole world has been suffering a very threatening, very challenging problem of climate change, and it is often the developing countries who are bearing the consequences of this kind of disasters, rather than, especially if we think about those African countries and small island countries on the Pacific. And the smaller and the more marginal countries are bearing the disaster consequences. And it is time that we switch the way we think about these kind of issues. But back to this thing, how can we develop a more sustainable model of coexistence between human and nature, right? This is why we're still studying nomadism, we're studying pastoralism in 21st century, right? We need to think alternatively from the modernized idea that human beings are bound to control the nature, which we can't. That I believe this is already a proven fact. So what we can learn from pastoralism about how human and nature should be living together, and as the nature is getting more and more unstable, and is it better for us just to leave it aside and let it repair itself like what resettlement policy has does, or especially when if it's not possible, and how can human beings living in a nature that is degrading every day, that's the weather gets colder, the wind gets hotter, and the land gets more and more infertile. And how can we still live so closely with a nature that is probably destroying itself and probably also destroying us? So I think this is the long-term issue everybody who are interested in nomadic studies should keep in mind. And this is also the question that would bring our work more into the dialogue of the Western academia and have gained stronger visibility and influence that we can collect from the indigenous knowledge and skills and culture. Okay, that's all of my work. And if you have any questions, you're very welcome. And thank you for listening. So,
Ja, så kan man ta kärn. So you transfer.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I was late. So my name is Chansa. So I couldn't discuss with her talk. What do you think if this resettlement program is not implemented? Do you think this Tibetan this particular creative coexisted in the environment?
No, I wouldn't think. I don't think they would call it that way. Yeah, because like the word environment itself does not directly refers to nature if we think about it, and also the word nature is very like human invented, I would say. So if environment, if nature is they the internal is a part of internal world that we live in, and there's no need to separate us from it. And why do we still call it environment as something that surrounds us, right? So I think if they were never settled down, I don't think they would take up this word. But like the word environment is, I think, yeah, I think it became a part of Communist Party's official discourse since around the same time with resettlement. So at the same time, around like 2006, the party has developed this discourse that like environmental safety, ecological safety is very important to our state. And they used the word specific, environment specifically. and which has been integrated as part of like daily life propaganda. So I would say it is a very invented and to a large degree politicized word that comes from outside into the local ordinary life. Yeah.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
So when they're settling, actually, they separate these people from traditional livelihood,
Mhm.
which means very strong connection with the cultural identity. Right?
Mhm.
In the talk, you see, there are kind of inside comes
Mhm.
prospect. These people realize their own identity,
Mhm.
and even they don't practice, they start inventing their time and money for
Mhm.
understanding their cultural identity and then reinventing some sort of.
Mhm.
So what do you think in the future, if still, even for instance, the kids, your families, they still invent for understanding or identifying their cultural identity, or is it because if I'm just trying to understand if people don't practice they
Mhm.
connected with this
Yes.
day-to-day life, and they keep this identity for children next so what do you think?
No. Yeah. So yeah, it's my problem. It's too arbitrary to say that it is a positive side of resettlement. What I can only say that there is a happy feeling, but it is not overall an advantage. So what they're going through is a strong clash of feelings, right? On the one hand, they have some time and money to reinvent their cultural identity, which is a reinvention, and on the other side, they feel really endangered because their traditional livelihood is so far gone, and it is not possible to pass it on to the next generation. So these complicated feelings are attacking them so hard internal, and and they also have no idea how to like keep this sustainable culturally for their kids, especially kids are going to the cities for education. So they are also having a strong anxiety, which well comes back to the reinvention efforts. But somewhere deep inside, they are also aware that these are reinventions. These are not genuine to a certain degree, these are not genuine. But how can we make it genuine? We don't know, right? So I would say, like deep down between the good, the bad, it's a very strong struggle. Maybe if there's a question, Owen. No?